Good evening. You're watching The Big Story with Haryanto Diman. I'm Olivia Quay.
Singapore reported 1,037 new COVID-19 cases as of noon today. 21 of them are Singaporeans and permanent residents. Foreign workers in dormitories continue to make up the bulk of the increase. The total number of cases here now stands at 11,178.
Meanwhile, in an interview with Bloomberg today, Trade and Industry Minister Chun said Singapore is planning more testing for the entire population when the nation reopens its economy.
We hope that in a month's time, we will be able to progressively reopen the economy with much more testings for the entire population, and at the same time to take on the additional safe distancing measures.
In other news, our colleague, photojournalist Mark Cheong, visited 3 foreign worker dormitories on Tuesday, and he joins us live now to share more. So, Mark, you went to 3 dormitories: S11 dormitory at Punggol, Tampines dormitory, and the Westlight Papan dormitory in Jurong. 2 of them are isolation areas, though. So, how did you gain access, and does that mean you're on quarantine now?
Hi guys. Yeah, so this was part of a MOM organized trip to let us see the different kinds of dormitories going through different procedures now. So we went to the Westlight Papan dormitory, which is in the west. That was a non-gazetted dormitory with 0 cases so far. The next one was Tampines dormitory, which is a gazetted dormitory. And then the last one is the dormitory with the biggest cluster, which is S11 with over 2,000 cases. So it was a supervised trip where we got to see different things. For example, we could only see the rooms in the non-gazetted dormitories. So the next 2, we could only be in the common areas, observing various stuff, and if we wanted to interview workers, it would have to be downstairs.
And Mark, what do you observe in all these 3 dorms? So what kind of conditions are the foreign workers living in? Say, their rooms, the toilets, and the food that they're given.
So generally speaking, across all 3 dorms, the biggest difference you could see if, let's say, you use the S11 dorm as an example. So maybe, let's say 2 weeks ago, before, or when the news just broke that it was gazetted, it looked quite chaotic with the crowds lining up for food. A lot of police were there, and it just looked more messy. But when we visited, it was really orderly, and everyone was very compliant. So if the residents had to stay inside the rooms, they did. Food now has been organized in a way such that a representative from the room comes down, collects for the whole bunk, goes up, and then no one else comes down, so as to have less contact. Yeah, so in that sense, it was much more organized, very sanitized, I guess. But other than that, we managed to see the room in Westlight Papan, which was now pretty void of workers, because a lot of the essential workers, their bosses have chose to move them out to a different accommodation. So the residents who we spoke to there were pretty happy for that case, because so far that dormitory has 0 cases, and they believe that having the essential workers move out was a good move, so that now there's much lesser chance of contracting infection.
Mark, did anything in particular stand out for you during your visit?
I guess the first thing was at Westlight Papan. This wasn't part of the itinerary per se, but we managed to see workers lining up, and we saw them getting the swab test. So yeah, it was, you see in the pictures, but you see in the flesh, you see in the video, it isn't a very pleasant experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you can see, they're grimacing. So that was one of the highlights.
The stick is very long, right? The swab. Yeah, oh my gosh.
And it goes in all the way, so
Wow.
that's quite, that's quite unpleasant. I guess the other thing would be at S11, to see the difference in what it was like compared to the pictures we've seen previously. Now it's it's really ghost town-like. And at the same time, you know, obviously there are measures to keep the residents in their rooms 24 hours, but honestly, to be kept inside the whole day for 24 hours straight is a pretty hard thing to do. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. So, you know, the dormitories have kind of been giving them concessions that, you know, they can come out of the room as long as they stay within the block. So, you know, at least they can stretch, breathe in some fresh air. So those who came out doing our media visit, you know, obviously they look pretty frustrated after 2 weeks of staying in the same block with very, very, very restricted movements.
Yeah. Mark, on that note, we understand that you also spoke to some of them as well, some of these workers. What are some of the stories that they shared with you?
Okay, so across all 3 dorms, we spoke to maybe 5 or 6 different workers, some face to face and some on the phone. So, I mean, the general sentiment was that they all agree that this lockdown is suitable and it is kind of a good solution for blocking out the virus. So they're all very compliant and they all think it's good. But the main thing, I mean, across everybody is that they all worry for their families back in their homeland. So the worry of them getting infected in Singapore is not as big as their worry for their families back from where they come from. So that was quite, I mean, it was quite, you know, sad in that sense. But then again, you know, we also talked to this construction worker from, so sorry, he works as a driver at a construction firm at Tampines Dormitory. His name is Mutla Anikuma. So he told us that, you know, he, like, with as little savings as he had, he still wants to try to donate some of these savings from his 10 years working in Singapore to fight COVID, which I thought was quite heartwarming. Yeah.
That's really nice to hear. So, Mark, back to your visit. What precautions did you have to take during your time spent in the dorms?
So MOM's directive was that we wear a mask. It didn't matter if it was N95 or normal reusable mask, but I chose to use N95, you know, just to be safe. And then we all wore surgical gloves, which we changed every time we exited each dorm. And those who had glasses or those who wanted to wear who wanted to wear spectacles or goggles, that was recommended as well. And also with equipment, I made it sure that I didn't, you know, put stuff on the ground. And as you can see on the picture, this is my cleaning process when I reached home. So I had one dirty tray and one clean tray. The tray, you know, the tray that you see is after I've cleaned all my equipment with Dettol, just to be safe. And then as well as my helmet, because I ride a motorcycle. So I sprayed it with Dettol and I sunned it for a day just in case. And after our last visit to S11, they also sprayed us down with disinfectant before we left the dormitory.
Right. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us, Mark. Stay safe.
Thank you.
We've been speaking to our colleague journalist for the Straits Times, Mark Cheong. The footage gathered by Mark that we've been showing throughout this interview will be up on our YouTube channel, so look out for that.
In other update, In other updates, the Singaporean man who breached the stay-home notice to eat bak kut teh was sentenced to 6 weeks jail. Alan Tam Siang Sheng is the first person to be convicted of exposing others to the risk of COVID-19 infection by breaching an SHN. Tam is now out on bail and will have to return to court on April 30th to begin his jail term.
The Ministry of Health confirmed that the 17 maids here who have been reported to have the virus were not infected by foreign workers. A WhatsApp message had circulated claiming that the COVID-19 situation could quickly spiral out of control if maids met infected workers. Law and Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam had also addressed these concerns in an earlier interview, saying the evidence we have so far is that they get the infection from their employers, not from outside.
Private hire car drivers can no longer make private arrangements to offer rides outside the ride-hailing applications under the latest revisions to the COVID-19 laws. Only rides made through apps like Grab and Gojek are allowed.
Earlier this week, on Monday, the second part of the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act came into force. It offers temporary relief from legal action for 6 months from April 20th, so that means until October the 19th.
Contracts in 5 areas are covered by the law: commercial and industrial property leases, construction and supply contracts, event and tourism related contracts, certain secured loan facilities, as well as hire purchase and conditional sales agreement. To break this down, we are joined once again by lawyer Justin Chun, a senior partner and head of dispute resolution practice at Tito Isaac Co. Welcome, Justin. Now, Justin, what does this part of the act mean to the public?
I think it means hope. We've got these 5 different types of contracts, and I think we have to look at the hard stop dates here. I mean, they only affect these 5 contracts, and they must have been entered into before the 25th of March 2020, and the obligation must fall after 1st February 2020. So if your contract is entered into on the 26th of March, for example, that wouldn't cover it. I also need to say that there's a lot of self-help measures that are imputed and inherent in this act and the subsidiary legislation. You have a situation where you can go online, you can apply for the notice, and that notice will be through this platform, sent to the creditor. And the creditor himself would also have a self-help mechanism where if he disagrees with your notice for relief, he can ask an assessor to come in and look at the situation. There's not much cost involved in this, and I think what's important is that us as lawyers aren't really at the forefront of this legal conversation. It's something that you can do, the everyday man sitting at your desk, you can do it by yourself.
Well, let's break it down further, Justin. Anyone who wishes to have relief must issue a notice to his creditor. What is the form of this notice and how is it going to be served on the creditor?
All forms that you need are going to be found at this website. And I'm just going to read this out. It's the MinLaw website, www.mlaw, spelled mlaw.gov.sg/COVID-19-relief. And on the left of that screen, there's sort of a toolbar. It covers everything from the notice to your request for an assessment, what's the assessor's, the different parameters that each form requires. It is a very simple platform. I mean, you can go in and, again, like I said, the everyday man should be able to lawyer for himself now.
Now, Justin, does someone need a lawyer then to issue the notice?
Lawyers would still be necessary, for example, to decipher whether your contract is capable of being subject to this relief. So I think on the first tier sort of analysis, you can get a lawyer in and say, is it even worthwhile for me to file this notice?
Justin, if I am a creditor and I disagree with the notice served by the debtor, what can I do?
The creditor can apply for that assessor protocol that I've spoken about previously. An assessors will be named pursuant to the Act. And what these assessors will do is to sort of adjudicate on the correctness of both the notice and the creditor's objection to the notice.
Right.
Justin, earlier on we were talking about the nature of the law, and why do you think the law is changing so quickly?
Well, because we have to, and we can. I mean, the law must reflect the reality of the situation, and our reality is this COVID-19 infection scenario. Our executive, our legislature have shown themselves capable and effective in being very, very agile and very nimble in addressing the everyday changes in the infection scenario. So I think it's 2 things. Again, we need to, we can, and we will.
Right. Well, thank you, Justin, for your time and for explaining this to us.
Anytime. Stay safe, guys.
We've been speaking to Justin Chan, Senior Partner and Head of Dispute Resolution Practice at Tito Isaac Co. To support the community during this pandemic, the team there sets aside 1 hour every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. to answer legal questions from the public. It's by appointment, and you can register at titoisaaclaw.com.
According to tightened circuit breaker rules announced on Tuesday, standalone outlets that sell only beverage, packaged snacks, confectionery or desserts have to close. Bakeries that sell mainly bread, like the Four Leaves bakery chain, remain open, but those that sell mostly cakes, like Bengawan Solo, have shut for now.
But what about smaller businesses in the F&B sector? How will they cope with a tightened circuit breaker, and can they survive? We're joined now by Ashraf Alami, who co-owns Fluff Bakery at Jalan Pisang with his wife. So, Ashraf, what was your immediate reaction when the additional measures were released on Tuesday?
Well, when we heard about the measures that were released, I would say that we were not entirely surprised, because we were expecting that something like that might happen. But at the same time, I guess we were quite disappointed that we were not allowed to continue with operations, as we were kind of hoping that we would be able to cover our costs. Yeah.
Now, Ashraf, when the tightened measures were announced on Tuesday, affected businesses like yourself, like Fluff, only had a few hours to figure out means of proper storage, clear stock, contingency plans, etc. What did your team do, from the time you heard about the new measures to the midnight time, 11:59 p.m. deadline? What did you do with your remaining supplies?
I mean, when we first heard about it, it was already night, so the shop had already closed for the day. So it was a bit of a scramble trying to get everything in order. For example, we had taken orders for the next day as well as for the next couple of weeks. So our immediate concern was to reach out to customers who were expecting their orders and they weren't sure what was going to happen to them. We reached out to them to inform them of what was going to happen next. We also had to contact suppliers because, for example, we had ordered 500 eggs to come to the shop the next day, and we tried to call the suppliers to see whether we could cancel the delivery so they don't send the items to the shop. And the last thing was we had to call our staff to let them know what was going to happen the next day, and moving forward what we expected from them.
Right. So was the whole process actually very messy on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I would say it was quite chaotic on our end, trying to figure out what to do next, and where we stood, and what to do with, for example, our inventory and all the ingredients we had at the shop that was perishable. So we had to figure out what we were going to do with all these things.
Right. So Ashraf, how was Fluff operating during the first 2 weeks of the circuit breaker? Did the new measures drastically change your business?
Well, I mean, during the first 2 weeks of the circuit breaker, there were a lot of instructions that was coming out on certain things that we had to comply with. For example, with the safety distancing, we had to put the lines on the ground to ensure that customers maintain a safe distance from each other. We put hand sanitizers in the shop for customers to sanitize their hands. We ensured that the staff were wearing masks to minimize any potential infection that they might get and stuff like that. So we did implement some of the measures that was advised by the government at the shop itself. In terms of business-wise, we actually saw a surge in orders on our end because people were working from home, and we started ramping up our deliveries. So we engaged third-party delivery drivers. A number of them had previously lost their jobs or were put on no-pay leave. So we had quite a ready pool of drivers who were willing to help out with deliveries, and we ramped up the number of deliveries, and we saw a surge in orders from people ordering and asking for desserts to be sent to their homes.
Right. Ashraf, so what now? What is plan B? Or is there plan C, plan D at this point? We understand that you are going to appeal to be allowed to run your kitchen so you can still do deliveries.
Yes, so at this point of time, because we have taken quite a number of advance orders, we have about 100 plus orders that we took from customers. So we are hoping that the government will allow us to continue to operate to at least fulfill these orders, because these orders that were taken will be very, very helpful with our cash flow. So at this point of time, we plan to appeal. Failing which, if it is not approved, then I'm not sure what else we can do actually, to be honest.
Oh, so worst case scenario, your appeal isn't successful. And what do you make of the government support made available to small businesses like yourself? Do you think Fluff will be able to survive and reopen eventually?
Well, the support that's been given in April and May, 75% funding for staff salaries is definitely very, very helpful for us. So based on the government's support over this current month and the next month, I think that we will be able to manage, as we had started putting aside some funds for a rainy day in anticipation for times like this. I guess the concern would be, for us, would be what happens in the next few months, because I think it is very uncertain, the economic environment. I think we might be headed towards a very bad recession, people facing high unemployment and things like that, which may affect our sales moving forward. So I think our concern lies more in the next couple of months.
Right, Ashraf, you were talking about the next couple of months. Now let's focus on Ramadan, that is in fact starting tomorrow, as well as the Hari Raya celebration as well. They have been affected, of course, by the circuit breaker extension. In what ways will your business suffer as well during this period of time?
Okay, well, being a fully Muslim-owned business, the lead up to Hari Raya, Ramadan, is a very, very busy period for us. It's actually one of the peak periods of the year for us. We have very strong sales in that month because we find that customers like to order cakes to meet up with family and friends when they break their fast. We also see a lot of orders for cookies in the lead up to Hari Raya. So with these circuit measures in place and people not allowed to have social gatherings, we do anticipate that there will be quite a drop in terms of the number of orders for cookies and cakes for this period. So yeah.
Right, well, thank you so much for your time, Ashraf. We wish you and Fluff Bakery all the very best. That was Ashraf Alami, owner of Fluff Bakery at Jalan Pisang, and he's one of the many small business owners hit by the stricter circuit breaker measures.
Looking outside Singapore, China yesterday reported 0 new COVID-19 deaths again, but 10 new cases were confirmed, down from 30 the day before. The declining numbers come amid rising concerns over the accuracy of coronavirus tests, after several people reported that they tested negative multiple times before finally getting a positive result.
Closer to home, Jakarta announced it will extend its social restrictions by 4 weeks. This as Indonesia's infections approached 7,500 yesterday. The restrictions were originally scheduled to end tomorrow, but they will now last until May 22nd.
Over in Europe, despite stricter social distancing restrictions over the past few weeks, France reported more than 500 new deaths yesterday. More than 21,300 people have now died from the virus in France. A similar situation was seen in Italy, as the official casualty toll surpasses 25,000. It is the second highest toll in the world, behind the US.
Italy's national lockdown is the longest one currently in force in the world, and it's reaching a fateful decision on how to start lifting it on May 4th. The country yesterday registered its highest number of new cases in 4 days, but it also posted a record figure for recoveries, with close to 3,000 over the past 24 hours.
Those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, do log on to straitstimes.com. Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.